Welcome to English Story Hub. Learn English through fun stories. Improve vocabulary, listening, and speaking skills. Like, subscribe, and keep learning with us.
The door she never pulled. In the quiet village of Belmere, nestled between silver rivers and singing forests, there stood an old stone archway at the edge of town. Within it, an oak door. Weathered, stubborn, immovable. Children told stories about what lay beyond it. Some whispered it hid a king's treasure. Others believed it was a passage to the land of dreams. Some even claimed it led to nowhere at all. But most villagers had long since stopped noticing it. All except one daughter. Her name was Elara. She had first seen the door when she was 5, clinging to her father's hand as they walked home from market. It stood silent and strong, half covered in moss, with ivy climbing like veins across its surface. Something about it called to her. "Papa, what's behind it?" Her father smiled, ruffling her hair. "No one knows. It's never opened." "Why not?" "No key. No map. No reason." But that answer didn't satisfy her. The next day, Elara returned alone. She pressed both tiny hands against the cold wood and pushed. It didn't move. So she came back the day after. And the next. And the next. At first, the villagers found it charming. A little girl chasing mystery. But days became months. Then years. And still, Elara came, every morning before school, every evening after dinner, sometimes even in the rain. She'd set her feet firmly, brace her back, and push. And the door never opened. She grew older, taller, stronger. Her arms grew tired. Less quickly. Her push more determined. But the door remained shut. People began to whisper. "She's obsessed," they'd mutter. "She's wasting her time. She's foolish." Elara didn't care. Every time she failed to open it, she'd whisper to herself, "Maybe tomorrow." As she grew into a young woman, her world expanded. There were books to read, lessons to attend, friendships to form. But always, each day, Elara found her way back to the door. Some mornings, she barely tried. Others, she hurled herself into it with desperation. But it never gave even the slightest inch. A few times, she thought of quitting. She'd stand before the door, hand hovering over the grain, and wonder what her life would be like if she just walked away. But she never did. Because deep down, she believed. She believed there was something behind that door. A purpose. A promise. Something that mattered. Then, one grey morning, Elara returned from the city. She was no longer the wide-eyed girl the villagers knew. Her clothes were elegant. Her voice calm. Her hands ink-stained from letters she'd written and contracts she'd signed. She stood in front of the door, now cracked with time. The ivy was gone. The wood brittle. she stared at it quietly. The crowd that had once watched her was long gone. Children no longer whispered about treasure. The door had become just another part of the landscape, forgotten. But not by Elara. Out of habit, she placed her hand on it. She didn't expect anything. Not now. Not after everything. Her mind was full of more. Practical things, debts, papers, schedules. Without thinking, she reached for the handle and pulled. With a creak, soft and slow, the door opened. The silence that followed was deep and impossible. No light burst through. No treasure gleamed. No magical music played. Only a quiet room filled with dust and shelves of old scrolls and faded maps. A table. A chair. A mirror. And on the wall, carved deeply into the stone, "You were always welcome. You just never asked differently." Elara stood frozen, one hand still on the door. Tears welled in her eyes, not of joy or sorrow, but of realization. The door had never been locked. She had just never thought to pull. She stepped inside. The air was still, peaceful, sacred. And there, in the mirror, she didn't see a girl who had wasted her time. She saw a woman who had never stopped believing. Elara stood in the stillness of the room, the dust floating like mist through slants of golden light. The shelves around her were packed with forgotten items, carved wooden boxes, brittle books with no titles, and scrolls sealed with wax that had cracked over time. Everything smelled of parchment, old stone, and memories long buried. She stepped deeper inside. There was no treasure, not the kind she'd imagined. No chests of gold. No magical relics. But she began to realize something far more valuable was waiting for her. The scrolls weren't blank. They were filled with wishes. Not hers, but from others. From generations before her. Each wish written in a different hand, a different style. Some were short. "Let my son return. May the crops survive the frost." Others were long, detailed, painfully human. They came from villagers long gone. Names she recognized from old gravestones. Legends she'd grown up hearing. All of them had once come to the door. All had once believed. But none had opened it. She turned to the mirror. It shimmered faintly, like moonlight on water. And for a moment, she saw not herself, but every version of herself that had stood outside the door. The 5-year-old girl with curious eyes. The teenager gripping the handle in frustration. The young woman filled with doubt. The adult who had finally stopped expecting. They looked back at her, not with blame, but pride. And behind them, other faces emerged. Old ones. Forgotten ones. Every soul who had pushed and never pulled. Then came the whispers. Soft, like leaves brushing stone. "Elara." She froze. "Elara, thank you." The room was alive now. not haunted, but honored. By opening the door, she hadn't just found clarity for herself. She had freed their hope. She was the first to see it not as a wall, but a passage. In the days that followed, Elara transformed the old stone room. She cleared the dust, lit lanterns, cleaned the scrolls, and began to record new ones. She invited others to visit, not to push, not to pry, but simply to sit and listen. And one by one, they came. Children first, drawn by the mystery. Then elders, who remembered their own attempts. Eventually, even the skeptical came and sat quietly, watching the stars fall through the open door. And each visitor left behind a wish, folded neatly and placed on the shelves. Not for treasure. But for healing. Forgiveness. Love. Understanding. Elara didn't need to return to the city. Her purpose was clear now. She had not wasted her years. She had been holding space for something greater than answers. Hope.